We're back again with another happy show for you all. In the last couple of shows, we've been reading selections from a remarkable book. It's the Ontario Reader's First Book from 1923, price 6 cents. It's what they read the kids in grade 1 back then, what the kids learned to read on. We read the first couple of selections in previous shows, and we're going to continue this week. There's nothing blatantly outrageous in this story by today's standards, as there may have been in the first two stories. It starts off with a little prayer, a morning hymn, which of course would be completely unacceptable today. And then there's a story called The Honest Indian. Well, what can you say about that? I'm just reading the stories to show you what they were like, and if you have kids in the schools today, you could compare the kind of reading material we were getting 60 years ago with the kind of material we have nowadays. It's an interesting comparison, and I'll let the story speak for itself. Here's one called The Crow and the Windmill, grade 1 story. There once was a windmill that swung its arms round and round day after day. It did no harm to anybody. But there was a flock of crows living near who did not like the busy mill. They said it wanted to kill some of them. What else could it mean by swinging its great arms the whole day long? So all the crows met together one summer evening near the mill. The younger crows all thought the mill a bad thing and wanted to pull it down at once. Then an old crow said, "Does the windmill ever leave its place and chase crows or hurt them?" The crows had to own that it did not. "How then," asked the old crow, "is it likely to kill any of you?" "Oh, it will do that if we go near it," they all said. "And is that the only way that any of you will be hurt by it?" "Yes, of course." "Then," said the wise old crow, "I have only one thing to say. Keep out of harm's way." Well, nice little story there. And no point to that, is there? Nice story anyhow. It reminds me, I always make little clippings from the newspaper when something from current events strikes me as being worthy of our readers' interest. Well, today I actually clipped 3 stories. It was a bad day. I almost can't stand to read the paper anymore. It gets me so worked up seeing all the crazy things going on. And if it's not the big things, it's the little things. I mean, there's a war going on in Yugoslavia. I don't even know who I'm supposed to cheer for. It's terrible. There's bad things all over the world. There's the Middle East. I don't even want to talk about it. And then there's the little things. Who's cashing in on the gallbladder trade? Some guy has written an article in the paper. He figures someone is making big bucks selling bare gallbladders. And he says that typically a bladder at this stage in Manitoba won't fetch a big price, about $5 or $6 a gram. And then he says elsewhere in the story that in Hong Kong, that the gallbladders, valued as medicine and painkiller, sell in stores for $4,000 to $39,000 per kilogram. And then he says, who's making money off the trade in Manitoba, and how are they doing it? How indeed. Look, if he's getting $5 a gram in Manitoba, and they're selling it for $5,000 a kilogram in Hong Kong, you see there's 1,000 grams in a kilogram, so $5 a gram equals $5,000 a kilogram.
Sorry, wasn't it cents a gram?
No, $5 a gram. Okay. $5 to $6 a gram. So the way I look at it, there's not all that much of a margin in there for anybody. I mean, who is making money off this trade, and how are they doing it? Good question indeed. But it's typical that you can pour through these newspaper articles looking in vain for sort of mathematical consistency. You can't really expect that of
of the English language press. Well, the Germans are another thing entirely. As our viewers will remember, we've found many excellent sources of technical, mathematical information in the Courier, the German language newspaper, which unfortunately I don't have with me today. I had a couple more clippings from the local papers. Oh, here's one. Council pushing to make headgear for cyclists mandatory. First it was motorcyclists, now bicyclists. I mean, can't they leave well enough alone? Why are they doing this to me now? I mean, isn't it the old story of the crows in the windmill? I mean, would these guys have the little crows wearing safety helmets so they wouldn't get hurt by the windmill? I don't know. I just don't know. But it seems like nobody can leave well enough alone anymore. Trustees taught facts about the University of Manitoba. I like this one. Imagine 200 students packed into a classroom where the dropout rate is more than 40% and you pay nearly $200 a month to attend. That describes the province's largest post-secondary institution, the University of Manitoba. And it's about a couple of undergraduate students who have gone back to their high school board in River East, and they're giving them a presentation about how bad it is in the universities and how much the universities are starved for funds. It says it's part of a province-wide campaign to gain support for better post-secondary funding. And I wish the people who promote these campaigns and go out making speeches on behalf of these campaigns would just add up their own figures. I mean, they talk about a class with 200 students in it, 200 students, and they know that everyone paid $300 tuition for their class, which means that just in terms of the money they paid out directly, there's $60,000 available to teach that class. Now, they can hire a professor for $60,000, and that professor can teach 3 courses without even hardly getting out of bed early in the morning. And so when they say that there's 200 people in a class and it's terrible because there's not enough money, well, it's not because the government isn't giving enough money. Even if the government gives them no money at all, and they just paid for it straight out of their tuition fees, there's more than enough money to support 3 classes at that student level. And when you multiply that by a factor of 10 to account for the total government money made available to the universities per course, per capita, you would find that if including government funding, there is not $60,000 available to deliver that course, but $600,000 available. So, you know, when they say that they have a class of 200 people and it's because of underfunding, it's not because of underfunding. It's because of the very low priority that the university puts on early undergraduate education. The university believes in the trickle-down theory of education, to lavishly fund the high-flying research, the so-called excellence that they're trying to promote, and expect that some of the wonderful benefits will trickle down to the students at the lower levels. Well, it's the students themselves that are running around convinced that it's underfunding that's at the cause of their problems. If they can't perform the simple calculation on their own and realize that there's more to it than just not enough government money, no one can help them. But isn't that the story everywhere, that no matter where you turn, people are complaining for more money? I mean, we just had the postal union on strike, we had the civil servants on strike. I mean, I work for the government in the public sector. I know we've got it good. I know we have better benefits, better wages, the dental, the pension, the indexing, the vacations, you name it, doesn't compare to what I get in the private sector. And yet, everywhere you turn, people are just complaining for more, that the government's not giving them enough. And at the same time, the country's going $30 billion deeper in the toilet every year on account of the deficit. No one seems worried about it. I don't know where we're headed. I just don't know. But what are you going to do? Let's do some math. Going back to the big board now. And some of those overcrowded classrooms are made up of people taking calculus. There's about 2,000, maybe 2,500 people in the province of Manitoba right now taking calculus for the very first time. And isn't that nice to know that society as a whole places so much value on people learning calculus? And it's a tremendous thing. And a thing I like to do is multiply a figure like that by the average lifespan. I mean, if you take calculus when you're 20 and live 50 years after that, assuming, let's say, the population is stable, that you take calculus when you're 20 and you die when you're 70. So for 50 years you know calculus. And if there's 2,000 people taking calculus this year, you multiply that in, you factor over all the 2,000 people every year for the last 50 years that took calculus, and that would mean that there was 100,000 people in the province of Manitoba that know calculus. That will follow everything I say in this lecture, as they do usually on every show of Math with Marty. I only wish it were so. And then it turns out like that. My mother was one of those people that had to take calculus. My father took calculus. Some of my aunts took calculus. And I realized, whoa, wait a minute, these people aren't really following what I say on the show. So it seems like the point of calculus is that we sort of believe it's good for people to be pummeled with something that they absolutely don't understand, and that their ability to perform in these circumstances is going to indicate that once they get out of university and they get hired to an important job in the civil service, that they'll continue to be able to function in an environment where they don't know what they're doing half the time. And this seems to be the major purpose, that we continue to be educating people in this way. But today we're just going to do a little very basic calculus to show what is the idea of calculus, because it is a fantastic thing. And we're going to start by drawing a parabola. And the parabola goes through the points. It's going to be y equals x squared, of course, as normally we do for a parabola. We'll have the point 1, 1, and etc. The point 2 goes to 2 squared, which is 4. Here's your basic parabola going through 1, 1. And the question we ask, which we could not even think of asking before we took calculus, but now we can ask, is what is the slope of the tangent to the curve at this point? What is the slope of the tangent at that point of intersection? And here's how we do it. The answer is that the slope is going to be 2, and I should draw my graph to indicate that. I'll redraw it a little better. When we say the slope is 2, we mean that if we project it back, it'll intersect the y-axis at the point -1. Okay, and how are we going to arrive at that? It's like this. We say we're going to consider a point up the curve, a little ways up the curve that's about there, and we're going to draw a little triangle there, and say we're interested in the ratio of these two sides, which we're going to call this side delta x, meaning the small change in x, and we're going to call this one delta y, which is a small change in y. And we're going to ask what is the ratio of delta y to delta x, and that's going to be the slope of the tangent. And here's how we do it. We say the value of this point here on the x-axis is 1 plus delta x. Because we moved over from the point 1, we moved over a distance delta x. So we got 1 plus delta x. Now if we square that, we get 1 plus 2x times delta x plus delta x squared. which means since the graph is y equals x squared, that tells us where we are up on the y-axis. So we can say that the value of this point is 1 plus 2x delta x plus delta x squared. And now, since we already were starting at the point 1, and we moved up a space, we can say the distance we've moved up is just the part without 1 in it. It's the 2x delta x plus the delta x squared. And then we say something tremendous. We say that the ratio of the sides, which is going to be the slope of the tangent,